Welcome to Parents Tool Talk Radio with your host, Jody Johnston Powell, licensed social worker, certified family life educator, second-generation parent educator, and author of the award-winning book, The Parents Tool Shop, the universal blueprint for building a healthy family. For over 25 years, Jody has been training parents and family service professionals nationwide and serving as a parenting expert to the media worldwide. Now, through the Parents Tool Talk show, Jody shares her practical advice and introduces you to other experts who can give you proven, effective advice on the issues that matter most to parents. So get ready to be informed, entertained, and enlightened as we join Jody now.
All right, hello everybody. I had folks unmuted during the intro there, but feel free to unmute yourselves if you want or come on video. We are in Tool Talk Tool Talk webinar today is on getting back to school during this pandemic. So we are just about 1 month out from what we're expecting to be kind of the pandemic period. And so we're still going to be here next month. I mean, we're here every month, but we've really been kind of just having this open discussion around whatever's happening around parenting during the pandemic since March. And we knew for sure we needed to be here in August and September around back to school issues. So today we have a lot of folks, all around the country who may have different restart plans for school. So I do have, some, maybe just one or two resources, but I'm really mostly just here to hear. I'm here, H-E-R-E, to hear, H-E-A-R, how things are going for you, and to really just help support you around whatever decisions you might be making, brainstorming ideas. And we are recording this, but sometimes we get into private problem solving. And so I just want you to feel free to share in that way, because I either don't share the recording at all, or if there's some good information and then we do personalized sharing, then I edit out anything that's personal and private. I really want this to be an opportunity for you to get whatever coaching support you need. Making this public is secondary. Your needs are first. So I do see some folks here. I don't know if you're here more to kind of receive information. If so, let me turn on my chat. The other thing is sometimes folks want to be able to get a certificate for attending. And so if I know that, I will also make sure that I share some information so that there's content that you can say that you received. If you're interested in a certificate of attending, just type that into the chat and give me your name that you want on the certificate. And then you just need to stay on for the entire webinar. And at the end, you check out at the end. And then that verifies you were here the whole time, and I can send you a certificate. So how about if the folks who are on now, if you want to either unmute or come off on your video or chat, if you want to maybe just check in and say hi, and how can I support you over the next hour? What would you like to receive? What's most pressing for you right now? And I just kind of want to hear like what's going on for you. What are things like? What does back to school look for you in your area? And what kinds of decisions are you getting ready to make? Hi, Clayton. Great. So let me, since I do see some folks want some certificates, so let me do this. Let me start, and this will kind of give us something we can talk about. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and let me put up some information about making school decisions. And we can just kind of use this as a starting point for a conversation, and maybe talk about how you can apply these tips in your own, for your own family. Went to the CDC because they do have a school decision-making tool. So just wanted to point this out. There's an introduction, what some of the considerations are. Some updates on COVID-19 and children, and I feel like this is one of the areas that is, well, there's a lot of areas that we don't know, right? There's a lot of information we don't know. I don't know that I would accuse people of giving misinformation, but I think that with something new like this, it's kind of evolving. So what we hear one week might be different than what we hear the following week, and it might be different. And that doesn't mean that someone intentionally misinformed us, but they didn't have all the information then. So a lot more information is coming out about COVID-19 in children. And while maybe some of what they're seeing is rare, I think we all, have different standards. I tend to be one that it's like, well, if there's a risk for either one or two, I wouldn't want to put all children at risk and risk anyone's children. But then there are other, folks who have a different perspective, and it's, I have to think about hundreds of children, and maybe they're looking at a couple of children. If that's all it affects, then the benefit to all or whatever. So this is a judgment-free zone. We're allowed to have different opinions here. One of the things I really think is very important is for each family to be able to make decisions that really work for them. And there's a lot of issues that are controversial in parenting, and Parents Tool Shop and Parents Tool Talk is our webinar each month. Our approach to that is that we try to present research-based information so that you have pros and cons and you're an educated decision maker. And then we support you around making decisions that work for your family. As long as those decisions aren't jeopardizing your child's health or safety, and obviously in the pandemic, that's what we've been dealing with, is those kinds of issues that really do. Usually they're more benign, how much screen time, or, breast versus bottle, bed, family bed versus not. So usually it isn't such serious issues, but that's certainly what we've been dealing with as we've really seen how this has kind of mushroomed into being something more than just a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Now it's looking like this is going to be with us more. So it's really a tough decision for parents to decide what they're going to do in terms of kids going back. So what I think I'd like, I'm going to, I think you can see me, but I can't see anybody while I'm sharing my screen. So let me copy this link so you have it. I will put it in the chat, and I'm going to click on this image here, and maybe we can go through some of these questions. So let me get my chat open. It's going to let me get my chat open. It's not, here we go. No. Not it. It's not letting me open the chat. All right, I think I need to stop sharing to be able to. Oh, hi, Julie. Great to see you also. So here's the link to this article that I was sharing. So tell me what is going on in where do you live, and what options is your school district, since you both are since you're a couple there, you're both parents. Where are you living? What are the options that your school district is giving you? And how do you feel about that? Feel free to either just come off audio or video, or just type that into the chat if that's what you feel comfortable with. Let me know where you're at and what your school options are. So while I'm waiting for that answer, it seems that most parents have two options presented to them, but I'd like to kind of propose or brainstorm ideas that have not been presented necessarily, but that might be an option. So most parents are being given a choice of either all in person, all online. A third, there are quite a few hybrids that are doing maybe, and let me back up. Those two decisions, for the most part, parents are having to commit to kind of all one way or the other. Generally, either the first quarter or the first semester, which would take them up to the end of the calendar year, to January. And there's obviously pros and cons to both of those. And depending upon your family, there might be bigger pros or cons to those in terms of work and childcare and where you're at, special needs children, that kind of thing, in terms of whether or not you feel equipped. If you're doing online access, I mean, there's so many issues that this is raising for families, and every family is really different and unique. So in your particular area, in Logan, okay, so you have both in-person and online offered. Okay, masks are going to be required from K through 12. Great. So at least if they are in person, you feel a little bit more comfortable from a safety standpoint that they're going to be trying to make some effort. The younger, type into the chat. I'm seeing that's how you're preferring to talk today. Type in there how old your children are or what grade they are. Because we've, of course, what we see on the news is always the more extreme cases of something, and that's not the norm. It's usually the exception to the norm. But it is pretty much known that the older children get, the harder it is to get compliance with mandates like masks, and videos of, hallways full of teenagers, not social distancing, not wearing masks, even though they were supposed to. Is something that we've seen. So with younger children, then you run into, they might be more willing or able to comply. However, and you have kids one who's 16 and then a 4 and a 3. So the 4 and the 3, I think that most kids under 9 aren't required. Your 4 and your 3 aren't in school, right? So they would still be at home. But your 16-year-old would be going to school. So yeah, and that's kind of the age where you may get agreements, but I don't know, does some of you remember, and I'll kind of say this to folks who might be watching this as a recording later, because we haven't really gotten into anything super personal yet. But I'm sure some of you remember, like, I really didn't like wearing boots or raincoats or umbrellas. It was very like, ooh, like, if you do that, I don't know, you're a dork or something. And so I can remember I would like put them on until I had to walk to school every day. I wasn't on a bus. I walked to school every day in the rain and the thunder and the snow, and that is true. But I can remember as soon as I got out of eye shot, those would come off. And I think sometimes with, kids, even if they're riding a bus, they might change clothes or they might not, and so it could be one of those things, if no one else around them is doing it. Peer pressure is a lot more intense in junior and high school. So that could be an issue of, you think you have agreements with your teen, and depending on your teen and depending on the school, of how much they're enforcing it. The one news story I did see where that scene was happening, the girl who, actually there are 2 or 3 kids who videotaped it, and they were suspended for videotaping this non-compliance. So that kind of sends a message to kids. Not only if you have a rule, whether it's okay to break the rule, and the people who are setting the rules, whether they're going to enforce them or not. So if you have those kinds of things happening, then whatever conversation you think you're having with your child, your teen especially, whatever agreements you think you're getting, you might not get the compliance that you think and that you're counting on getting for them to be safe in doing the online, the back in person option. So out of curiosity, which option are you choosing with your 16-year-old? Because also younger kids with online need a lot more help. And depending upon someone's learning style, online is also something that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. Okay, so in person. And my granddaughter, they live in Miamisburg, which is in the south of the Dayton area, and they've been basically presented with the same options. They just had a board meeting, and that might be changing in the next day or so. Like everything else in the pandemic, everything changes from day to day because we're in kind of a hot zone there in a county that in Ohio, you guys are in Ohio also, so you're familiar with this, but anyone who's outside of Ohio, there's kind of this 4-color rating of how bad the infection rate is, and they're in a county that is in red. You guys are kind of close to Athens. Athens at one point was kind of in the red. Maybe you can text in there, like, if you guys are at the top level is a level 4. Are you guys at a level 3 still there? Or are you back down to 2? Our county went back down to 2. But one of the things because they are now still at this red level, they're making a decision again whether or not they're still going to offer the in-person. They've already delayed it by a month. But my daughter's a school teacher. She normally would be teaching, but she was on maternity leave, so she decided to nanny this year. And so she's been nannying a special needs child plus a toddler, a baby, and then she has her own baby, which is why she was able to do that. And then since the pandemic hit, she's also had her own child who's the same age as the special needs child, who's 7. And even though she's home, I mean, she's nannying, but she's there, and she is a teacher. She is just seeing that from her, what her child needs really needs to that more in person. And from the social, emotional development standpoint, it's been really, really hard for her. So they are deciding that she'll go back to school full time in person. She's only 7, so I'm not quite sure what they're going to do, because generally it's 9 that they do that. So I don't know whether or not they're going to require masks for her or not. But one of the things for us as grandparents then is that if she's going back to school full time and kind of getting possible exposure, then we're going to have to kind of go back into quarantining again. And I'm starting to train in person again. I train foster parents and caseworkers for the state of Ohio, and I just am starting back to live training this week in the counties and the regions that are allowing it. And I think there's only 2 right now that I'm aware of. There might be a couple more that are starting to plan maybe further out, September, October, November, December. But like this week, I've got 3 trainings. And so I'm kind of going from doing just online to that. So I'm possibly maybe, even though we're being safe about it, maybe technically getting exposed. So we're kind of heading back into that, where I may not be able to be there and as involved of a grandparent in person as I normally am. So actually we went camping over the weekend. That was kind of our last hurrah. We thought she was going to be starting class this week. So right now you're in the yellow, which is good. So it's yellow, and then Athens was on purple watch, which is purple is the highest level in Ohio, but it's still solid red now. Okay, so it's purple is the worst, level 4, and then red is the level 3. Orange is where you guys are at, and so good. And we're back to orange and then yellow. You guys, yellow's the best, right? Correct me if I'm getting that wrong. They've been doing pop-up testing, and school there in Athens is all online. Okay. Yeah, and you guys are just outside of that. So, hi, Tanya. I'm not hearing you. It looks like you're trying to talk, but I'm not hearing you, and it looks like you're unmuted. So you may want to double check your audio. And I know Tanya has teens also, so we may be having a conversation about teens heading back to school today. So let me see if I can help in any way. Yeah, Tanya, I'm not sure if your audio isn't working with your mic. Try calling in. Do you have the look for some phone numbers on there? Maybe you can call in, because I'd love to have you join our conversation. And Tanya's a graduate, a Parent School Shop graduate. So she also, I usually get a chance to connect with her on our graduate support webinars and in person. We've not been doing in person because of our in-person graduate support group. So Tanya, see if you can attend to your audio and speak up as soon as you think you've got it. What I'm going to do, since you just joined, is I'm just going to pop over to the screen that I've got up here. Let's take a look at this decision making. Julie and Clayton, if there's like something in particular that you would like to discuss or have covered, why don't you take the opportunity to type that in and talk to me a little bit through the chat. And I'll just pop over here real quick so that Tanya can see what we were looking at over here. And we didn't look at this very much before, so we'll take a closer look at it now. So this is from the CDC, and I just zoomed in. How I got here is I went to this school decision making. When I get back, I will pop this into the chat again, because Tanya won't see that in her chat since she joined us. But it's an article on back to school by the CDC, and I'm clicking on this image here, this decision making tool. So you kind of, agree, disagree with some of these statements, and then that can help you make some decisions about how you feel in terms of your comfort level. And then virtual at-home learning, what considerations you might want to consider. And then what I appreciated is that they included both academic and the social emotional well-being, because that is definitely a consideration that you do need to include it's not just, if your child needs in-person instruction or there's special needs, or, in my granddaughter's case, she's like kind of ahead of the class. So academically, it's not so much that she needs that in person, but it's more of the social emotional. And she's had a really hard time emotionally of not being connected to her peers at all. She's very social, very much those of you who have taken either my foster parent training on Keep Your Cool or have read the book or taken my class, that internal versus external recharge kids, actually people, because we're all this, we all have these recharge styles, but she's an external recharger. And so if she doesn't get access, to other people, that's really where she draws her energy. Not that she doesn't need to be alone sometimes, but it's been really hard for her. So there's that. And then there's also the school-based services. So if you have a child who's on an IEP, this is something I would really recommend that you go and definitely check out this. Actually, what I'll do is I'll put a link to this actual PDF directly to this PDF. But it has questions in there about the kinds of services your child might get at school, if they get free lunches, if they're getting therapy, whether or not they need to be going in person in order to access those. It's pretty impressive that they were able to pull together any kind of a decision-making guide, since every parent's decision is so unique and based on their child. But I think they've done a pretty good job of being able to provide some guidance. So let me stop the sharing because I think I might have heard. All right, Tanya, I thought I heard some sound.
Hello.
Yeah, there you
Can you hear
go.
me?
Hi, Tanya. How are you?
Sorry, I had to fix some settings there.
That's okay. I appreciate you doing that so that you could join us. So let me put the link to this resource. This is the link to the article. And then let me go ahead and put a link directly to this PDF because you all might want to just jump to it instead of. So that's the second link in there. It ends with PDF is the one that's the actual checklist that I was just looking at. So Tanya, I know you're in the Dayton area. I'm not sure, I don't recall exactly which district you're in. I want to guess Beaver Creek, but I might not be correct with that. But share, you've got teens, and so what options are you being given in your district?
Well, I'm in Kettering, and
Kettering, okay.
my son graduated in May, so I just have one left in school.
Okay.
They offered us two options, in person or fully online.
Okay.
The online option was being done through an outside agency.
Oh, okay. See, that's a factor, right?
Yes. And so we actually chose the in-person option, and we signed her up. She's going into 9th grade.
Okay.
And then after that, like right after the deadline to make your declaration of what you wanted, the Montgomery County Health Department came out with an announcement that they wanted schools to start online. That was their recommendation.
Yeah.
So the district kind of pulled back after that announcement and said, we're going to reevaluate. They pushed the school start date back to September 8th.
Yeah.
And then they said, we're going to use that time to reevaluate whether an in-person option will be still an option.
That sounds really similar to Miamisburg. I was just sharing, I'm not sure where you came on in terms of me sharing that my granddaughter's in Miamisburg and she's 7, so she's not in the high school, but that they did the same thing. They first just pushed back. They had it's almost identical to what you described, but then I heard after that Montgomery County, and I was sharing with the other folks who are on here are not in Montgomery County, so we were just kind of comparing what level, those of us in Ohio have these levels, which is, I think, is a great thing. I kind of wish that was, maybe a national thing that we could all kind of use a similar standard, because then it can help make decision making a little bit more consistent. But yeah, they're doing the same thing. So we're kind of waiting to hear whether or not Miamisburg is going to change anything or not about going back. So if it so right now they haven't they've just delayed the start date, but they haven't decided that it's going to be all online yet. Is that correct?
Right. They decided they're going to have a public forum.
Okay.
This week, where people can sign up they have 3 minutes to give some, pointers that they want to put in. And then that's this Thursday night. And then Friday, they're having a school board meeting to try to make decisions based on the community feedback.
Good. I'm glad that they're asking parents, and I think that's been the delay in Miamisburg also. They had a similar kind of an open forum for their board meeting, or a public forum, and then they were going to have a board meeting after that. And we've not heard what the decision was, but like you say, they've got until September 8th now to consider that. So we keep looking every day for a decision, but actually it's probably more realistic. The way you said it is probably more realistic, that they're going to take that time to decide, and we might not know. And, you know, maybe that's a good thing, because if they told us today, who knows what's going to happen in 2 weeks, right? Like,
Right.
are we not all getting really good at like being flexible? And, you know, for folks who really like consistency and predictability, this has got to be really tough. We are all getting lots of lessons in being flexible and deciding. So if there was something that you either wanted to discuss or wanted to get ideas on or support or whatever, what would that be for you right now? Kind of what is that? Where are you at in terms of this and feeling comfortable or wanting support?
I don't know. I feel like I know what I would like for school, but my daughter, she's okay with going back in person pretty much. She's not thrilled about the masks.
Mm-hmm.
What I have seen in the last, since March, and how she's behaved with the end of school and the summer, I feel she desperately needs to return to an in-person option and get around people.
Yeah.
She's really not been, she has like one go-to friend that she talks to a lot, and that's great, and it's a great friend. I really like her a lot, but that friend does not go to her school, so they're going to be at different high schools.
Yeah.
And so I'm just concerned that she's spent all this time interacting with that friend, which is great, but not really interacting much at all with anyone else.
Yeah.
Who will be at school with her.
Yeah.
So that's my main struggle, I guess, is to kind of foster how to get her to realize that she needs to cultivate some of those other relationships. And she's finding it hard because, there's not a lot of get together in person stuff going on. And so she has to find ways to create conversation, like by text or by, other means.
Yeah. And one new thing, I may have mentioned this on a previous webinar, but I'll say it on here. One of the newest pieces of brain research that has come out since COVID and is related to that is on screen time. And what they're seeing is that it isn't a matter of how much screen time a child has. It's partially of it, obviously, is age, because brain development is very different at different ages. But whether or not it's back and forth, kind of that serve and receive, which is really important for brain development. If that's happening online, like say with friends or with grandparents, that kind of screen time, like if you're counting screen time and they're limited to screen time, the recommendation is that kind of screen time doesn't necessarily have to be limited, other than staring at a screen, literally for your eyes, getting tired. But in terms of screen time, what they're saying to limit is more kind of that passive, watching TV, watching videos, maybe a computer game where you're not necessarily interacting a whole lot. You're just, so I thought that was interesting, because, that's one of the things we've really done for kids is help them connect with people in a virtual way so that they can have some of that connection. And the other thing, I'm going to toss this out, because you could end up seeing people doing this. And if they go all online, and here, everyone here, including, my granddaughter, I know they're in the same kind of for the same reasons, wanting their 7-year-old to go back to school in person. And I don't even know that if they're going to wear masks or not at age 7. I was mentioning that before you came on, Tanya. But one of the things that she was thinking about doing, my daughter was thinking about, and I can't remember a point you came up, but my daughter is a school teacher, but she's off on maternity leave and is nannying. And so she has a special needs 8-year-old, her own 7-year-old, now that the pandemic, now she's home out of school. And then she has her own almost 2-year-old babysitting a 2-year-old and another 3.5, almost 4-year-old. So now she's got 5 kids she's nannying. But she's taking the year off. Well, now it's going to be 2 years she's going to take off due to the pandemic. But one of the things she had thought about doing was so that Evie, who's my granddaughter, would still be able to be with other people, was for her to kind of create their own little pod, like that maybe there would be 2, 3, maybe 4 kids total, that they would still get together in person, to either do online or discuss online, or that she would take whatever the lesson plan was and she would kind of teach it to them like a homeschooling, kind of like a hybrid alternative homeschooling kind of thing, so that the kids would be able to interact with each other. And obviously, any parents who agreed that their kids would participate in that, then all the families would have to agree that, like, they wouldn't go outside the pod, like they could see grandparents, but like that they wouldn't go to a big, events or whatever that could then bring contamination within the pod. So I think we might also see some people doing some creative alternatives like pods, or if everyone has to go online, well, could the kids maybe connect by Zoom and discuss something? What I'm really hoping is that if things go all online and parents don't have a choice about that, that the schools will be better about sharing information or making a way possible for parents to help their kids connect with their school friends. Because I think that was one of the really hard things that Evie had, and it sounds for you, Tanya, like your daughter also, that that sudden, unexpected cutoff, no time to really kind of have closure and to say goodbye and to share emails or whatever. And so my granddaughter has quite a few friends, and she just can't even connect with them because she doesn't know how to find them. So I'm hoping that the schools will think about things like that as they're making decisions. And if it does come down to having to do all online, that maybe parents will think about some alternative ways that they can still get some social interaction if that was the reason they were going to go to school in person. Let me take a look at, Julie had said school is supposed to start here on the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th with a phase in. So I wonder if that's certain days, certain kids. So our 16-year-old needs the social interaction. Yeah. School sports is the other challenge. Yeah, it's looked like they may be allowing fall contact sports. That's surprising because a lot of places are canceling, but our school is not pay to play, so the testing requirement will price our district out. Really? Oh, wow. So that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that whole aspect to sports. I was just mostly thinking, the contact piece of it in terms of COVID. Huh. That's really unfortunate. Although yeah, sports is just going to be it's just going to be wonked out this year, because there's going to be some who don't play at all and who are out. And then those who do play, then who are they going to play? And that's like a whole other discussion. And I'm wondering, I've seen some teams starting to do some practice. I take my dogs for a walk around our public park, and it's real easy to social distance and all that kind of stuff. I just stay on the trail around the outside. But I've started noticing more teams starting to practice like soccer teams, and they're mostly just doing drills, where they can stay apart on the field and go, dribble this way and back, but not a whole lot of contact. And obviously soccer isn't as high a contact as things like basketball and football. And then running the track, and they can space out doing that. But yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a way that maybe they can still interact, but not have as much contact. This just gets so complicated, as you start to look at all these different factors they're into play. And so much of it is out of our hands. So it's like, we as parents just kind of have to wait and see what options we're provided with, and what latitude we have in terms of, can we do something? My daughter was like, well, can I do homeschooling? And my stepmother used to be a school superintendent. She used to be part of the Ohio Board of Education. And so, a quick call to her and she's like, yep, she could do homeschooling, and she knows how to do lesson plans, and people do even less than what she was planning on doing and doing homeschooling. So there are some options. I think the other piece is if children are home online, that puts working parents back to where they were right when the shutdown happened. Or I should say, as it started to reopen and people started to go back to work, of childcare issues. You guys have teens, although Clayton and Julie, you guys have 2 toddlers or, preschoolers. So you already know that you're going to have some kind of childcare for them, whereas teenagers maybe could stay home during the day if you feel comfortable with that. It's 16 and some of the, older, you may feel comfortable with them doing that. Or if you're working from home, obviously that would be okay with a teenager. They're capable of being able to do that. But yeah, it really brings up issues, again, of online as well, but then they're not in school. And I'm kind of counting on the kids going to school so I can go to work. And so I don't, again, that's another factor that I don't know how that's playing in with our particular families that are here with us, as well as just kind of in general decisions that need to be made. So what are some, so there's the school content, school sports, that's another thing. So at this point, let me read what you had just said. What are your school's online learning environments? Google Classroom, Blackboard, etc. Yeah, so Tanya, share a little bit about what is this third, like it's not the school district, but what online learning program is your school district going to be using?
Well, typically we have Google Classroom, but when they put out the two options, online or in person, for the year, the agency was Apex Learning that was going to do the online option.
Okay. I'm not familiar with them.
And I don't know much about them
at all.
They had a list of classes that would be available. So if you went with the online option, you'd have to kind of conform to that list, and you might not be able to do what you plan to do this year. You'd go around the list.
So that really matters, because, and what grade is your daughter?
9th grade.
9th. See, and stuff starts to count now, right? Like towards graduation,
Mm-hmm.
towards what you want to do with college. And so it really, class offerings really does matter a lot once you're getting at the high school level. And that might be something, Clayton and Julie, that you two are also facing with your 16-year-old, of what are the class offerings. The other thing I think would matter to me with online is whether or not it's all static, pre-recorded, you watch, it's all passive learning, or whether or not there are active teachers for a grade or whatever, and that there's some interaction, or you can see other students, or you can do breakout rooms. One of the things, just as we're trying to move a lot of our foster parent training and our caseworker training online, we as trainers are really trying to do more than just at least we can discuss, we're live, but we don't really want, because we know it isn't as good, to just kind of sit passively and, I can't imagine doing a 6-hour or 18-hour training that would be like that. Having some live interaction really makes a difference. And I think that I believe truly that, the technology is there. We just need, and I've seen some people, not necessarily in America, I've seen some really interesting things other countries and just other people have been doing that are very interactive and seem to me, yeah, it's not in person, but that's pretty doggone close. Like for being online, they're doing a really good job of being able to kind of replicate that would be like, but online. So it also kind of depends, these online options of looking at, well, what would that really look like? And how passive is it, and how much time does the parent need to be involved? I saw some kind of a commercial. I zoomed through commercials, but I happened to see one, and it was for some kind of an online learning, and all the pictures had parents helping their children do a physical activity. And so I was like, okay, so if it's online, that means that parents are having to do a much heavier load in terms of really being involved with their children. It's not like you can just sit them in front of a TV and expect that everything's going to be done for you online. So there is a lot to consider. Have any of you done online? Go ahead, Tanya.
I asked around some other parents if they had any experience with those online platforms, and I really just got one person who, she is staff in another school district, and she said that their district decided that if they had an online option, it would be done by their district's teachers, not by an outside agency. And I asked her why, and she said that she's heard that those types of online agencies, that it's the school is very self-guided, that the student has to guide through themselves, and there's not a lot of teacher interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, a student who might be a little ahead of the game is getting through the whole curriculum in like a month, and then they're
right.
So it didn't seem like a good option for us. I can see why it might work for some people, but it wasn't for us. Besides, besides that, just we wanted her to have the social interaction if
Right.
possible.
Right. And if a school were to, what I had envisioned is if they said that there would be live and online, that the online was going to be like streaming the classroom or something, and that the teachers would actually like they'd be getting the same thing. And yeah, I'm starting to see that that's not what every school district had in mind either. And you're a good case of that,
Right.
Tanya, is that is not what it is at all. I'm wondering if they end up going 100% online, if the teachers will then do something online that's available to everybody. So that'll be interesting to see and shift in that way. From one standpoint, otherwise, what? Teachers are out of a job? I mean, on the one hand, I know they want to get back to work from an economic, standpoint. And from a school standpoint, they know that it's best for kids to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make that shift, or if they decide that now, if they can get whatever that technology is. I mean, I'm only familiar with Zoom and GoToMeeting, but Zoom has like breakout rooms and you can see everybody. And, so I really think the technology is there. But what it takes, and this is what we're doing as trainers, is so for every workshop I have now that I've been teaching on in person, now I've got to have two other ways. I've got to figure out how would I do that online, where I might not physically connect, and then also how can I get live but with social distancing. So like anything where we did, like I just did a workshop yesterday for caseworkers. It was my first time doing back like a full day in person, and there were less than 10 people. Everybody was 6 feet apart. They all wore their masks, at least when we were moving around. Some chose to remove it during the training, and I was 12 feet away, so I was able to take it off. But I do, those of you who've done my workshops in person, like, I like to do like games and interaction and like fun things, and even with caseworkers, they need to have fun. And so normally I would do that, and it was like, that whole workshop was small group work, puzzles, games, like things that they were working on together. And so basically we just kind of sat and talked all day, and literally all day. It was a 6-hour training. And I think I did okay, at being able to kind of keep things moving and interesting, but it's just really different. And that I think is still better than being passively online. I've been videotaping a lot of my workshops so that at least if people are sitting passively watching, it's not just reading, but they're actually watching a live class that was recorded, which I think is next best thing to being in a live class, or an online class. So I just think there's a lot of options, and I would like to see the school districts making the effort, because they've had time. They've had, spring and summer. Now they've got an extra month. It doesn't take like years. Now it's taking some people years to switch to online, but I don't know that it has to. So I'd really like to see them taking a look at, is there a combination that might be able to address like social, emotional, as well as academic and not passive, and because I'm pretty sure there's a way of doing that. Let me see. What Julie says is the technology is there. I ask because I feel like schools are not making the investment, and technology does require huge monetary investment. That is true. Many colleges use teacher-led classroom online environments, but they have the planning and investments to do so. Yeah, and this is why I'm hoping, I don't want to get political, and I don't even know that I am up on what I'm about to say, but I know that there's I've heard things about schools getting money, but only if they go in person or online. And so, yeah, I would kind of hope that it would just be more school district money. And if they need to buy PPE for the ones that are going on, personal protection equipment for those who are, to provide masks, or if they can use that money to provide iPads and Wi-Fi setup or whatever. We had a local guy, my son actually works for him, so this is why I think I know about it, but he ended up paying, it's an internet company. They set up internet. He buys real estate, and they all over the country, and they rent out these apartments, which is kind of the moneymaker piece of it. But then my son goes in, or the staff that he supervises goes in and sets up all the Wi-Fi in the apartments. And so when this happened, his boss, I don't know how, but I guess he worked with the Dayton Public School, found out which families didn't have access, and they contributed Wi-Fi setup for a lot of families to be able to do online. I think there's some places, and where Julie and Clayton live in Logan is, Logan is a small town, but it's in a really rural area, and kind of that bigger Athens, Southeast Ohio area has a lot of rural areas that don't even have any kind of access. So you can't even set up Wi-Fi. So how do you serve those kids online? And then those kids don't even have the option, really. So if a parent did feel uncomfortable sending kids to school from the safety standpoint, health standpoint. They don't have that. So they have to go. So then what happens to them if the schools, let's say there does become some kind of a mandate that's made safety-wise that all kids have to go online. Well, then if those districts haven't really planned for that, then yeah, it's going to be something, yeah. Kids are just going to be getting farther and farther behind. Especially kids I'm really concerned about. We started doing this. My second webinar of every month is just for my parents, and I added in there and parents of special needs kids because they're really getting hit hard. Parents of special needs kids during the pandemic and all of the therapeutic services and special education and the IEPs, all of that has ended, and very little of that has made the transfer online. And these kids are seriously backsliding. I mean, my granddaughter, she's pretty intelligent and pretty good academically. She's not backsliding a whole lot, but this special needs child that my daughter's nannying, I mean, he's already nonverbal. He's profoundly autistic. And I mean, he's like back to writing on the wall with his feces. And, his parents, one is working from home and the other is unemployed now. He was a chef at a restaurant that didn't do takeout. So he's taking care of him now. And Amber's just kind of watching the other 4 kids. But, and Julie says one of their little ones is autistic, so on the autism spectrum. So yeah, so all those special services just like ended. No, I mean, the feedback I've been getting, because I've really been, I've connected with a lot of parents and foster parents since March. I did about 12 to 15 support sessions for the foster parents and caseworkers, like over the month or 2 right after we everything kind of shut down to help with all the craziness that we all had to deal with when that was first happening. And I really did not hear anyone. No, I take that back. I did. I heard from maybe just a couple of people. I think they were in the Cincinnati area that their therapists or whatever were doing a pretty good job of keeping up with it and whatever. But it really was the exception. It was a rare exception rather than the rule. So I'm really concerned about special needs kids. So, and one of your little ones, so at least they're not in school, right? So, although now does your little one, who is special needs, are they getting, were they before the pandemic getting any kind of services and have those continued or ended? I'm just curious, if you have a special needs child, what your experience has been. And I know they're not in school, but because that's been a pretty consistent thing within the schools that we just weren't ready for this, all day preschool. Oh, okay. Nonverbal OT and PT. They were, so your child is nonverbal and he or she was getting OT and PT. Am I interpreting that correctly? So all day preschool. So they've been home full time with you. So have you been getting any kind of guidance or suggestions on what to do with your special needs, of things that you can be doing at home? I'm curious how responsive people have been. Oh, and I see someone is joining us. It says US. So we'll see as they come on. Hello and welcome to whoever is US. Feel free to come off mute. We are just discussing making decisions about going back to school. Unless maybe one of you is trying to get on a different way. Oh, nope, they left. Okay. So Julie or Clayton, was the OT and the PT, did that continue after the shutdown? And if not, here, you were typing it in. Okay. And speech. The school has an IEP for him. They had services like the last week or so of school, but nothing since. Yeah. See, that really concerns me. I just thought, silly me for assuming that it would be like, I at least want to give like parents some things they can be doing or check in every week. And I don't know if it's a logistical thing or there's a legal thing because they're not physically in the schools or whatever. I don't know what the reason was. In my mind, this is just me. This is a personal opinion, but it's like, well, as long as I'm not legally going to suffer consequences, like I'd be reaching out but I'm like that kind of service person. Like, I'm not going to leave my folks high and dry I'm not getting paid for that. Well, I probably would have done something as a bridge to kind of make sure people were settled before I backed out if I wasn't allowed to do anymore. So I'm really, it troubles me to hear that, because just our average brain, our typical brain children who are in school and doing fine, there, we see them suffering in, emotionally and socially and educationally. Then, you add in special needs kids who really need that extra, and parents are not, that's not really what we're trained to do. Maybe some parents go and get a lot of extra training and but if you wanted to do that now, that wouldn't be available. So it's really just so many things about the situation I know are so stressful and are just not what would be ideal if we could have that. I was really hoping that, at least in terms of online options, I was really hoping that we would have more options and that those options would be more interactive, so that if you had to pick between online or in person, it would be more equitable. And not equal, but equitable. And you guys, I use this example all the time, and I heard it recently, and we had a conversation about this. I think it was just a month or so ago on the foster parent webinar about talking to children about racial equality, and it was kind of the big elephant in the room that we were having a discussion about how to talk to kids about that. But one of the analogies of equity versus equality, and it's been coming up a lot lately, we talked about it yesterday in my workshop about working with parents who have cognitive limitations with the caseworkers and the kind of service they give to them. Equality is everybody gets equal. So if I'm 5'9", and let's say Tanya's 5 foot, and Clayton is 6'2", and we're standing at a 6-foot fence, Clayton doesn't need any kind of a stool. I only need a stool that's about 4 to 5 inches, but Tanya needs one that's about a foot tall for her to be able to see over. Equal is we all get 4-inch stools. That's equal. So Clayton didn't need it. I can see over the fence, but Tanya still can't see over the fence. Equity is Clayton doesn't need a stool. He doesn't get a stool. I get the 4-inch stool, but Tanya gets one that's a step stool that she can get up to the top and be able to see over. That's equity. And so what I had hoped that we would see isn't like, oh, well, we've got, 2 options, but that those would be equitable. In other words, what I'm hearing parents say is the reason they're choosing the in-person is because it's giving their children things that they are seeing they're not going to get from online. And maybe, and it's certainly the way the online is being set up, it appears that it's not possible. I think there are more equitable ways to do online that would be closer, and people wouldn't, if the only reason they're doing that is so that they get this interaction, there may be ways of doing that. So I was kind of hoping that things would be more equitable choices that parents would have. And I'm still hoping that those, now that we're getting closer and some of these districts are saying, well, let's push back a month and let's see what we can do. I'm really hoping that they will step up to the plate and say, wow, if this really isn't safe, we're in the red or whatever, and we are looking at online, maybe we should rethink how we're doing online. So I hope that the parents have been able to speak up and advocate for what they want for their children. I hope that the school districts really listen to that, and that they find some ways of being able to do that, and that maybe there will be some good, investors or some people or government funding or whatever it is that it takes for them to be able to do those options that are more equitable with that. Julie says the preschool teacher tried to do Bloom's online video. I'm not familiar with Bloom's. It's a BLOOMZ online video with the kids the last month or so of school, but the kids were just not engaged. See, I think also, the teachers, and this is what we've been getting training on, although it's up to us to do it, but we've been provided with the resources of how to convert our trainings to online. So the people like me who are really interactive, like, well, how do I do that online? And there's ways you can do that. So it's really up to the teachers to be, and yeah, I know they didn't, sign on to be teaching online. I didn't either. And there are some trainers, who have said, this is just too hard for me. I'm just going to retire. I'm just not going to do this anymore. But then there's others. It's, it's been really great to see some people that are like, I'm really scared. I don't know how to do this, but if you guys will give me some support, I'm willing to learn, and so if teachers can have that same attitude, I really believe that there's pretty good online technology, and justifiably so. Julie has mentioned 2 really important key factors, which make all of this null and void. One is if you don't have the money for it and nobody comes to help out. And number two, doesn't matter if you're online, if somebody can't get any kind of internet service, then they're out. So that wouldn't be equitable. So yeah, I think I'd love to see kind of the community come together and people who have the money be willing to help those who don't. That, of course, I'm rather idealistic. That's my bleeding heart social worker coming out of me, that I'd love to see that of kind of the community coming together, and let's make sure everybody's taken care of, and let's have teachers who are willing to step up to the plate and that kind of thing. So we can wish, we can speak up, we can advocate, maybe share resources. But in the bottom line is going to be that we're just going to have to wait and see, what options we're presented with, and choose from options that maybe in our minds, neither are equitable. So then it comes back to us kind of having to deal with our own emotions about what we're seeing with our kids, or maybe feeling like they are going to school. If we don't feel like they're going to be, like say, for example, they weren't mandating masks or enforcing that. Some parents would have a problem with that. And then it would be like, well, I don't want to have to choose between my child's physical health and how that could contaminate, maybe our family. Let's say it's a multi-generational family. I don't want to have to make a choice between, health and education. It'd be nice, especially in America, for us to be able to do both. So yeah, I wish that, I wish that we had come to this point in August of back to school of being able to say, wow, they did, there's lots of great things that people have been researching over the summer, and it looks like we're going to have some good choices. I haven't really heard anybody who feels like 100% excited over whatever choice they've made. I think everybody feels who has decided whatever they've decided, feels that is the best decision. I'm not hearing that. But pretty much everybody I've talked to has been, yeah, but, I'm not crazy about this aspect to it. So I guess once again, this is kind of what we're learning, right? Through this, is that we can't always have everything perfect, and we're having to learn how to, adjust and be flexible and make the best of things and figure out how we can keep our kids safe. With the online, if it does go to that, think about the whole pod idea. You don't have to commit to homeschooling for the whole year if what you're doing is like maybe a support thing where the kids can get together, or maybe even a Zoom, where they can discuss whatever this passive is. So maybe just, think outside the box and brainstorm with each other, and talk with other parents. And I will be here again next month. We'll see. So the next one in September, it's always the first. So the first Tuesday of September is September 1st. So we may have an opportunity to talk again next September before everybody goes back on the 8th. So please come back. Let me know how things are going. If you can't come on to the webinar, maybe shoot me an email. But I really want to hear, how did things go for all of you? Julie says she did a pretty good job, but one has ADHD and one is autistic. So I think, just as you already explained, online has challenges to meet needs for all. Thus, it creates these separations. Yes. And how those are addressed. Yes. So stay in touch. I'm going to be here. Now, I will be here again. We're going to focus on special needs kids and foster children, kids with a trauma history or special needs, in 2 weeks. It is a different link. And if you want that, go to Foster Parent Tool Shop on Facebook, and you can get the link to that one there. But you can use the same link you did for this to register. You can sign up for next month. So let's see how things are next month, and how we can support each other as we head actually into school. And then I also would like to know from those of you who have been coming, as we start to get more back into that routine, I'm probably going to start planning more topics as topic presentations and discussion, as opposed to just kind of showing up and being open to discussing, which is what I thought was needed during the pandemic. So if you have any ideas for topics that you would like for me to find a speaker or to do a little bit of research and pull together a 1 hour, let me know that. And the other thing is that if you want a certificate, be sure that you check out now at the end. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And Tanya, it was great to connect with you again. I've missed seeing you at our graduate stuff. And Tanya and Clayton, I look forward to seeing you again, or doing something in person whenever we get back to that, of seeing you when I'm down in the Athens area. So in the meantime, let's stay connected. Feel free to contact me anytime. Just info@ParentsToolShop is an easy way that you can reach me, easy way to remember. So take care, everybody. Bye
Thank
now.
you.